Hello students. Hello students. So today history chapter 3rd, rural life and society. We'll start. Before that, I have explained what about Battle of Palase, Battle of Buxar. So with that Battle of Palase, Battle of Buxar, we have come to know that how British expand its territory. ब्रिटिश ने कैसे अपना टेरिटरी बढ़ाया. ओके ब्रिटिश ने कैसे धीरे धीरे करके जो वो सेटलमेंट, वो ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी आए थे, ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी ने कैसे सूरत में आने के बाद कैसे पूरे इंडिया को कैप्चर कर लिया, कंपनी बना लिया. सो वो एक कंपनी, ओके ब्रिटिश अराउंड 200 ईयर्स रूल इन इंडिया, इट्स ट्रू. देयर आर डायरेक्ट रूल एंड इनडायरेक्ट रूल. तो कंपनी ने जो रूल किया था अराउंड 100 ईयर्स, वो इनडायरेक्ट रूल था, क्योंकि कंपनी को जो लाभ मिलता था वो लाभ वो क्वीन एलिजाबेथ, क्वीन विक्टोरिया इन लोग को भेजते थे. ओके टैक्स के हिसाब से उन लोग को जो प्रॉफिट मिलता था भेजते थे. और उसके बाद क्या था, वो लोग पार्लियामेंट, लंदन पार्लियामेंट से ही काम चलाते थे. तो ये कंपनी रूल कर रहा था. रिमेंबर कंपनी रूल कर रहा था. 9 में मिलेगा अच्छे से, फिर भी समझा रही हूँ. कंपनी रूल कर रहा था यहाँ पे, ये कंपनी का रूल चल रहा है. रिमेंबर कंपनी ने बहुत सारा लॉ बनाया, रूल बनाया, कैसे मतलब पैसा उतना कितना उनका प्रॉफिट हो जाए. उन्होंने कभी भी इंडिया के बारे में नहीं सोचा, उन्होंने अपना प्रॉफिट सोचा ओनली. सो यहाँ पे हम पढ़ेंगे इन दिस सिस्टम विल लर्न इट्स अबाउट व्हाट रेवेन्यू सिस्टम मोस्टली, हाउ दे collected revenue, more and more revenue. As we know, before British entered, India was a very agriculture prosperous country. Okay, cottage industry, agriculture इंडिया में बहुत अच्छा था. इंडिया को सोने की चिड़िया बोला जाता था. सो बहुत अच्छा था, बहुत प्रॉस्पेरस था. जो भी किंगडम रूल थे उसमें इंडिया ऑलमोस्ट ठीक ही था, क्योंकि पैसा यहाँ पे ही था. किंग अगर रूल भी कर रहे थे तो पैसा, यहाँ का पैसा कहीं, हाँ बहुत सारे किंग ने लूटपाट किया, बहुत सारे किंग ने लूटपाट किया, फॉरेन किंग ने लूटपाट किया, फिर चले गए, ये अलग है, ये भी है, सही है, बहुत सा लूटपाट किया. लेकिन जितने भी किंग ने यहाँ पे सेटल हुए, यहाँ पे रहने लगे, तो यहाँ पे ही मतलब सब खर्च करने लगे और यहाँ के ही लोगों को देखने लगे, और किंग यहाँ पे ही रहने लगे, जो वो यहाँ पे ही पैसा वो करते थे. मतलब रेवेन्यू सिस्टम डिफरेंट था. तो इंडिया के लोगों को इतना परेशानी नहीं था जितना ब्रिटिश आके इंडिया के पूरे एग्रीकल्चर कॉटेज इंडस्ट्री को पूरा डिस्ट्रॉय कर दिया. ओके पूरा ब्रिटिश ने डिस्ट्रॉय कर दिया. यहाँ पे देख सकते हो इंडिया का नेशनल इनकम, फॉरेन ट्रेड, ये सब क्या था, ऑलमोस्ट डोमिनेंट एक्टिविटी कहाँ पे, एग्रीकल्चर डोमिनेट कर रहा था. एग्रीकल्चर बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट था. रिमेंबर खेती बाड़ी हम लोग का बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट था, बहुत अच्छा एग्रीकल्चर चल रहा था. एग्रीकल्चर इकोनॉमी वॉज दैट टाइम प्रॉस्पेरस. बट सी कंपनीज पॉलिसी रिवॉल्व व्हाट, कंपनीज पॉलिसी ने इनकम का सब डिफरेंट मैक्सिमम क्या था, उन लोग का मैक्सिमम ये था कि उन्होंने रेवेन्यू सिस्टम को थोड़ा सा डिफरेंट कर दिया. ये देखो रूटलेस पॉलिसी ऑफ रेवेन्यू सिस्टम, यहाँ पे रूटलेस पॉलिसी बोला गया है रेवेन्यू सिस्टम को, क्योंकि व्हेन ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी वाज ग्रांटेड दीवानी, बिहार में जब पलासी युद्ध के बाद जब बिहार में बंगाल पोर्शन, होल बंगाल पोर्शन बिहार उड़ीसा में उन्हें किया जा सके और बेचा जा सके, सो ऐसा कलेक्ट किया. सो company got what now, company principally adopted 3 types of revenue collection. उन्होंने ऐसा माथा लगाया कि 3 टाइप के रेवेन्यू कलेक्शन का मतलब पॉलिसी स्टार्ट किया, जिससे वो ज़्यादा पैसा कमा सके. उन्होंने कभी भी इंडिया के लोगों के लिए नहीं सोचा. सो वेयर हियर वी विल लर्न अबाउट 3 टाइप्स ऑफ रेवेन्यू कलेक्शन. सो हियर रफली यू कैन सी 19% ऑफ टोटल एरिया, जैसे बिहार, बंगाल, बिहार, बनारस डिवीज़न, नॉर्थ वेस्टर्न प्रोविंस, कर्नाटक, नॉर्दर्न प्रोविंस कर्नाटक, ये सब में क्या था, उन्होंने फर्स्ट सिस्टम क्या था, जमींदारी सिस्टम और परमानेंट सेटलमेंट, ये 2 है. हाँ परमानेंट को जमींदारी सिस्टम भी बोला जाता है. उन्होंने फर्स्ट ये एक रेवेन्यू सिस्टम स्टार्ट किया. देन सेकेंड उनका रेवेन्यू सिस्टम क्या था, महलवारी सेटलमेंट. ओके ये कहाँ पे उन्होंने किया, नॉर्थ वेस्टर्न प्रोविंशियल, सेंट्रल प्रोविंस, पंजाब उन्होंने किया. देन थर्ड सिस्टम क्या था रेवेन्यू का थर्ड सिस्टम था राइटरी सिस्टम. मोस्टली 51% उन लोगों ने क्या किया, बॉम्बे, मद्रास प्रेसिडेंसी, असम, ये सब से रेवेन्यू कलेक्शन किया. सोचो, जस्ट थिंक हाउ मच दे कलेक्टेड फ्रॉम इंडियन पीपल, and this money they collected from Indian people, never thought about Indian people development, and they sent to the London. ओके सो ये है क्या था, ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी, वो कंपनी जो ट्रेड से बिजनेस चलाते थे इंडिया में, उन्होंने ऐसा काम किया. ओके उन्होंने ऐसा काम किया कि इतना पैसा कलेक्ट किया रेवेन्यू में. मीन्स क्या, कोई भी कॉटेज इंडस्ट्री हो, उन लोग से ज़्यादा पैसा, ज़्यादा रेवेन्यू लेते थे. रेवेन्यू मतलब क्या, टैक्स. ज़्यादा टैक्स लेते थे, चीज़ भी लेते थे, बेचते थे लंदन, मतलब क्या करते थे, रॉ मटेरियल इंडिया से लेके लंदन में भेजते थे, वहाँ पे गुड, अच्छा सा फिनिश गुड बनता था, फिर लाके वो इंडिया में ही लोगों को बेचते थे। सोचो, इंडिया का ही चीज़, रॉ मटेरियल, कच्चा जो रॉ मटेरियल होता है इंडिया का ही चीज़ लंदन में जाके अच्छा सा फिनिश गुड बना के इंडिया में ही लाके बेचते थे। सोचो कितना, मतलब हम लोग को धोखा दिया ब्रिटिशर्स ने उस टाइम पे। सो नाउ यू कैन वॉच वन वीडियो विच आई हैव taken from the video that on digital class. You can learn about these three system, okay, how they exploit and what are these three system.
I am a zamindar in Bengal from the 18th century. Before the British arrived, I was the Raja of this land and pay revenue to the British. The revenue was fixed. This ensured that a fixed and steady supply of revenue streamed into the company treasury.
The zamindar has to pay the British. So what does he do? Takes money from us. Do you know, even when our crops fail, we still have to pay the zamindar? I didn't want to lose my land. So I took a loan from a money lender, but I couldn't repay him in time. Now I have no money and no land. My fellow farmers face the same plight. I am the headman of a village in the northwestern provinces of Bengal Presidency. I rose to power when Holt Mackenzie introduced the Mehelwari system in these parts of the Bengal Presidency in 1822. Under this system, as the village headman, I had to collect the land revenue from each landowner, and then the total revenue for my village was collectively submitted to the government. Farmers like me continued to suffer and lose our hard-earned money. The village headman became a powerful landlord while we peasants were reduced to abject poverty. I am a farmer in the Madras Presidency. Due to Sir Thomas Munro and Captain Alexander Reed, we the farmers became the owners of our land. As individual farmers or ryots, we pay revenue directly to local government officials. Revenue officials cautiously surveyed each of our fields based on the fertility, nature of the soil, and the crops produced before fixing our revenue. Soon we realized the pitfalls of the system. The cost of getting the land measured and the power exercised by the revenue officials further increased the tax burden. During colonial rule in India, indigo was a major source of revenue for the British. The indigo plantations were largely concentrated in the province of Bengal. These indigo plantations were located around the indigo factories. Women usually carried the harvested indigo plants to the factory, where it was converted into a dye. Let us find out the process involved in producing indigo dye in those times. The plant was stripped of its leaves and placed for several hours in the fermenting vat which had warm water. Fermentation began only after the leaves had been soaked for a few hours. This produced a thick layer of bubbles and froth on the surface of the vat. The decayed leaves were retained, whereas the liquid was allowed to drain into another vat kept just below the fermentation vat. The drained liquid was collected in another vat which was called the beater vat. Here, the liquid was continuously beaten and stirred for several hours to get air into the mixture in the beater vat. Workers used paddles for this. Slowly, when the liquid turned green and then blue, lime water was added to the vat. With time, the indigo separated into flakes. As a result, the clear liquid rose to the surface while the muddy sediments settled at the bottom. The liquid was discarded and the residue, the indigo pulp, was transferred to the settling vat. Once the indigo pulp dried, it was compressed, molded, and was made ready for sale. Famines have been a recurrent feature in India. However, the 18th and 19th century is the period when it reached its peak. This was the time when the British ruled India. From 1858 to 1947, almost 20 major famines afflicted the Indian subcontinent. Let us examine the features that led to recurrent famines in the country. The first and foremost reason was the over-dependence of Indian farmers on the southwest monsoon rains for their irrigation needs. When monsoons failed, famine was inevitable. The second reason was the selfish interest of the British that forced the peasants into cultivating cash crops that fetched high prices in the market and earned huge revenues for the foreigners, but left little or nothing for the poor peasants. While production of commercial crops increased, that of food crops declined. The third factor was the inaction of the British to meet the needs of Indian farmers when a famine occurred. For example, when the Bengal famine of 1770 occurred, at about the same time, the East India Company officials raised the taxes in the region. It is believed about a quarter of the population of Bengal died in a period of 10 months during this famine. Further, money earned from taxing the poor Indian farmers was used to pay for the military or administrative requirements of the British rather than for the relief of the needy. Before the British rule, the native rulers made certain administrative provisions in the interests of the peasants. For example, getting wells, tanks, and canals dug in their kingdoms and empires. In contrast, whatever help the British provided to the famine-affected areas was always meager and too late. The introduction of the unfair land revenue policies of zamindari and rayotwari systems further heightened the misery of the farmers. In these methods of revenue collection, the landlords were merely interested in collecting the money from the tenants. They were not interested in improving farming techniques and irrigation facilities which could have countered a drought.
I am Kishan Lal, an indigo farmer from 19th century Bengal. You would have heard the name of Mangal Pandey and the Sepoy Mutiny of 1857. But have you heard about the Indigo Rebellion of 1859? Perhaps not. The Indigo Rebellion was a movement of farmers against the planters in Bengal. What exactly is indigo? It is a rich blue color that is extracted from the indigo plant. This dark blue dye, produced from indigo plants, was widely used in the textile industry. Indian indigo was in demand in Europe much before British colonization of India. However, the quantities in use were small owing to higher prices. Towards the end of the 18th century, the textile industry started flourishing in Europe due to spread of industrialization. This resulted in an increased demand for indigo. At about the same time, the world supply of indigo fell by nearly 50%. Thus, the British turned to India for indigo cultivation. By the end of the 18th century, many farmers in Bengal took up indigo cultivation since demand for indigo went up considerably. Nij and Ryoti were the two main systems of indigo cultivation. Under Nij system of cultivation, a farmer directly controlled the land where indigo was produced. Under Ryoti system, the planters forced the landowner to sign a contract to grow indigo plants. Of these, more than 75% of cultivation was done under Ryoti system. But we, the indigo farmers, were unhappy under the Ryoti system. Since indigo cultivation was much profitable, many British officials gave up their jobs to settle down as planters in India. British planters forced us to sign a contract called Satta. When we signed the contract, we received loans at low rates of interest to cultivate indigo. This might look harmless, but it had many adverse consequences. As per the contract, at least 25% of our land had to be used for indigo cultivation. The harvest from the indigo crop belonged to the British planter. Once the harvest was done, new loans were issued to start a new cycle of indigo cultivation. The money we received was very little for the effort we took in preparing the soil, sowing, and looking after the crop. But the planters did not relent, and cycle of exploitation went on and on. That was not all. Planters forced us to cultivate indigo on our best soils. Once indigo was cultivated, the soil quality decreased. We couldn't cultivate rice on our best soils anymore. In March 1859, we decided to put an end to this oppression. We refused to cultivate indigo or pay rents to planters. Women, zamindars, and also village headmen joined the protests since they were fed up with the harassment by planters. Local zamindars were unhappy with the increasing power of the planters and angry at being forced by the planters to give them land on long leases. We also received support from the intellectuals of Calcutta. They wrote of the misery of the riots, the tyranny of the planters, and the horrors of the indigo system. After the Sepoy Rebellion of 1857, the British were worried with the possibility of another revolt, so they intervened. The Lieutenant Governor toured the area in winter of 1859, and the farmers took his gesture as sympathetic. Magistrate Ashley Eden issued a notice against forcing us to enter into contracts. We saw this as a sign of sympathy from the government. The military was brought in to protect planters from attacks. The Indigo Commission was formed in 1860 to look into the issue of grievances of indigo planters. The report of the commission was in favor of us farmers. Though we were asked to fulfill existing contracts, we could choose not to cultivate indigo in future. The revolt came to an end, but with it, the indigo production also collapsed in Bengal.